First of all, thank you very much for spending time out of your schedule to come here today for Eagle Mine's community update. Just out of curiosity, is anybody here to enjoy the food that wasn't coming for the community update? No, okay, I didn't know if we were surprising anybody or not. My name is Matt Johnson. I'm the External Affairs Manager for Eagle. And first of all, I'd like to really thank all the staff here at Mount Shasta for all of the work and the food preparation for us, and for Scott's reinvestment in the restaurant. Pretty awesome place, especially with the history that this facility has. And if you didn't know, if you look outside, there's a lot of work going on, and there's going to be some outdoor seating and a band shell, or an area where there'll be a band. And so there'll be outside entertainment as well, because there'll be a new door put in the back right here. So come back this summer when it's all done. So to go ahead and get things started, I won't introduce everybody, but it just so happens that everyone sitting at the bar, except for Scott, works for Eagle Mine. So I kind of feel like they're my lifeline. So if you ask any questions that I can't answer, I have a whole host of people that can do that. So we'll see if that happens or not. It usually does. So I'll just kind of start with some basics about Eagle Mine. How many people, is this your first time ever attending a community forum? So got some new people. All right, thank you very much. So we do this every 6 months. We do 4 forums every 6 months, so 8 forums a year. This year, you might have seen in some of our advertisements, we have 2 new things going on, and those are 2 open houses, one in Covington Township and one in Lance. And that's to talk more about our exploration interests in the western UP. So to introduce Lundin Mining, so Eagle Mine is an underground nickel and copper mine. We're owned by Lundin Mining. It's based in Toronto. And these are our global operations. So we added Eagle to Lundin's portfolio back in 2013. And then right after that, Chile. They had already owned Portugal and a mine in Sweden for a while. And we also are part owners of a refinery in Finland. Brand new as of 2 weeks ago is a copper gold mine, open pit mine in Brazil, right smack dab in the middle of Brazil. And so that's new in the portfolio for Lundin. The sale of that mine is not final yet. It should be final by the end of July. So that brings our total global employment to 8,000 people. And feel free to ask questions anytime along the way. If you have a hard time hearing me, just let me know. I'll try to raise my voice a little bit. And one thing we do in all of our presentations is start out with safety. Talk a lot about safety at Eagle. It's a focus that we have every day when we come to work. And also we want our employees and really all of you to bring safety home with you when we're doing work around the house as well. So this year, since the beginning of the year, we've had 3 medical aid injuries. I'll talk a little bit about those. 2 of those medical aid or injuries were broken fingers, fractured fingers. And when we talk about the tools that we have in our toolbox, what is the most convenient and easy to use tool in our toolbox? Anybody want to take a guess? Hammer. What do you use to grab that hammer out of the box? Your fingers, your hand. This is the most convenient tool we have, but sometimes we put it in harm's way. So one of the fractured fingers was a contract employee, or one of our underground contractors, adjusting the forks of a Cat 938, and while moving the forks slipped and pinched his finger and caused a laceration and a fracture. One of the mitigations to that injury, so every injury we'll investigate, we'll ask, what happened, how can we prevent that injury from happening again in the future? So now we have a tool that we're using besides the hand for that fork adjustment. The other fractured finger was a surface drill rig, a contractor that was pulling one of the drill pipes from the ground, and his finger got put in the wrong position and got pinched and fractured that finger. And then the leg infection is kind of interesting, kind of a good lesson, I think, for everybody. We had an employee walking down a ladder, climbing down a ladder, and he missed the bottom rung of the ladder and fell. And the fall caused bruising to his leg. And that bruising ended up causing an infection, which required medication. And so it's just something to be mindful of. Ladders are very dangerous, and always pay attention to what's going on when you're climbing up and down a ladder. And then we also had one lost time injury, our most serious injury this year to date. And we had a contract employee walking out of a building in the wintertime up at the mine site and was walking down some stairs, just a few stairs. But his hands, I believe, were occupied. And when he walked down the stairs, slipped, fell, and broke 3 ribs. And if anybody's ever broken ribs before, it's a very painful experience. It takes a long time to heal. So that particular employee couldn't come back to work that next day because of the injury, so a lost time injury.
When you say a contract employee,
Yeah.
can you explain, are there contract employees or?
That's right.
Tell me.
Yes. So in the next slide, I'll explain that in more detail. It's a good question. And one thing we also do when we first proposed Eagle Mine in the community, and this is more than 10 years ago, we made a commitment to hire 75% of our workforce from the local community. And at that time, the community defined for us what that meant. And that meant anybody from the Upper Peninsula who works at Eagle Mine is considered local. Right now, so we always track our percentage. Right now, we have 82% local hire. That's our average this year. If we took today what our local hire is, it's actually 86%. So we're doing a pretty good job. We've always pretty much been above that 75% local hire benchmark. And then to get to your question, where are our employees from and what's a contract employee? So in total, we have 437 employees. That fluctuates a little bit. And 198 of those 437 employees are employed by Lundin Mining, by Eagle Mine. If you look at all of our underground miners, they're contractors. So they work for a company called Cementation, and there's 100 of those. And so the cementation employees are our primary personnel that work underground. And then we have our truck drivers, and Van Dam employs the truck drivers. Then we have our exploration employees, G4S, which is our security teams at both the mine and mill. SGS is the lab that we have at the mill. Final Touch is our cleaning service. And then Mineral Range is the short track haul, the rail from the mill to the yard in Ishpeming. And so they have 4 employees that run the train. The big change from the last time we did our forums back in November was how many exploration employees we have. And that changed from 53 to 17. And the reason for that change is that we've refocused refocused our exploration strategy. So we've had drill rigs leave the area, which reduced the number of exploration employees that we have right now. And springtime is always kind of exciting for us because we have a lot of young faces come in to the operations. We have 15 interns who are from many different areas, many different schools, and they have many different specialties. We also have 13 summer students. Summer students are primarily the children of employees. So we have a program that we hire children of employees in the summertime for summer help. And if you're not familiar with our process, I'll just go through it kind of broadly. So we are an underground mine. And this is a loader working in one of the underground tunnels, getting ready to load the ore into a haul truck that will truck the ore back up to the surface. This is a picture of ore. We store the ore inside a building at the mine site until it's picked up by a haul truck and driven 66 miles down to the Humboldt mill. And in the mill, the primary front end of the mill is crushing units. We want to take that ore and make it a lot smaller. So the mill crushes the ore, and then we put that crushed ore into a ball mill. And inside that ball mill, we have big metal balls like ball bearings that bounce around in that mill and crush that rock to more of a sand consistency. Once it's crushed to the size that we want, we add water and reagents, certain chemicals, to allow that metal to become hydrophobic and float. And then we float the metal away from the rock, and we end up with our concentrate. So our final product at Eagle Mine is a powdered form of nickel and a powdered form of copper. So we have two products that we produce at the mill, copper and nickel. Then that is loaded into a rail car and sent to our customers in Canada. This is the mine site. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
Are there other minerals besides the copper and nickel that you have?
Yes. So copper and nickel.
How is that separated from the copper and the nickel?
Yeah, so we have 7 different minerals. And so copper and nickel are our primary, and that's what we sell. We don't separate any other metal besides copper and nickel. But mixed in the concentrate, we also have cobalt. That's our next largest quantity of metal. Platinum, palladium, gold, and silver. To give you an idea of kind of the value, is 70%, depending on nickel price and copper price, 70% of our value comes from nickel, 30% or 25% comes from copper, and then we have 5% left. So that 5% is the cobalt, platinum, palladium, gold, and silver. So very small quantities, but still enough where we actually get credit. So once that metal comes out in the refining process, further on down the road, we actually get a credit back for those metals. And cobalt can be a very valuable metal. Last summer it got up to $27 a pound, when nickel sits around $6 a pound. And that's because of the hybrid vehicle industry. And cobalt's in high demand. Good question, Bill. Has anyone been to the mine site? Raise your hand. Okay, so there's been a couple. If you're ever interested, we'll have the last slide of the day is our information about our public tours. So every Friday in the summertime, you either can tour the mill or the mine site. We do not go underground though, full disclosure, for the mine tour, just surface tour. So this is the mine site. And if you can see this picture right here, that's the portal, and that's the entrance to the underground mine. This rock pile here is basically waste rock, production rock. It's rock that does not include any ore. So we use that rock to go back underground. So every time we remove ore from underground, we create a void, and we fill that void back up with aggregate that we truck on site and the rock that we produce from developing the tunnels. So you see all around this area kind of legacy rock piles from mining. All of our legacy rock will go back underground. And this paved area here is what we call the contact area. And the whole mine is designed really to control water. So any snow or rain that comes on site, we collect in our water basins. And any water from the underground, we pump up to our water basins. We treat the water in our water treatment plant, reverse osmosis water treatment plant, and then we distribute the water back into the environment once it's cleaned. And this is the same picture of the surface facilities, just an aerial view. This is where the ore body sits, so it does not sit right underneath the surface facility. And this is the new ore body, Eagle East. So it gives you an idea of the underground tunnels. And here's another picture. This would be a side view. So this would be the portal here. And then you can drive down to the Eagle ore body, which sits about 1,000 feet below the surface at its steepest point. And then a much further drive down to Eagle East, which sits a little over 3,000 feet under the surface. And if you consider the weather down that deep. Anybody want to take a guess how hot it is? What's the temperature?
54.
60.
All pretty close depending on where you're at. Eagle East without ventilation is 90 degrees. Which is a lot different than, on average, the 50 to 60 degrees up in this area. So we needed certainly to put ventilation down there. So this is a picture of one of the fan units that pumps fresh air into the underground workings, where on average now, that deep, we can cool it down to 70 degrees. So that's how, that's the temperature when the miner goes to work. So I'll give you another schematic here. So if I were to drive from the portal down to the bottom of Eagle East, that would take 1 hour. In total, we have 5 miles of tunnel systems developed. The investment here, just to dig the tunnel down to Eagle East, was over $100 million, and it's taken about 3 years so far. And we're almost there. We should be mining Eagle East ore by the end of the year. And we'll mix it with what we have left in the Eagle ore body. From a ventilation perspective, you can see this green line. It might be kind of hard for you, depending how far back you are. And this green line, that's part of the ventilation system of how we draw air in through the portal, and we bring fresh air through the mine and exhaust it through the ventilation system. What we're focused on today is if you just kind of blew up this portion of Eagle East, it might look something like this. These black lines are new drill holes. So we're doing what we call infill drilling. So we know the ore body sits down here, and we want to do this drilling from underground because it's a lot more efficient to do it from underground than drilling all the way down from the surface. And we want to know, okay, were we right? Does the ore body sit where we think it sits? Is the amount of ore there that we thought was there? And is there any more than what we had predicted? So it's a very important piece of work for us that's ongoing right now. And going back to the Eagle ore body, so this would be a side view of the Eagle ore body. And these yellow lines are different levels. So these yellow lines are tunnels that are developed next to the ore body and into the ore body. And how we manage the actual mining of the ore is we mine from the bottom up. Each one of these colors that you see is a stope. So we take a section of ore, it's called a stope, and then we mine that one stope at a time. Once we mine a stope, we fill it back in, and then that gives you access to the ore in the stopes next to the stope that you just mined. What does it look like underground? So if you're standing at the top, so what we do with the stope when we mine it, we drill it from the top of the stope, blast it, and it falls down to the tunnel below, and then we send that loader in to go grab it. So if you're standing on a level looking down into a stope that was just blasted, it would look something like this. Standing right here, looking down into the stope. Or here's the stope right here, this brown or red area, and here's the levels of different tunnels. If you're standing in this level here, looking down into the stope, that's what it looked like. And there's a little video I'll show you. So that's mucking a stope. Interestingly enough, there's nobody in that machine. It's being remotely operated. And I think I have a picture of that. So the operator wears a harness like this, And he is underground with his machine. He's in sight distance of the machine, and he's remote mucking it. Anybody know why? Yes, it's safer. Because one of the life-saving rules, and really rule anywhere, especially in the U.S., is you don't work under unsupported ground. So after you just blast a stope, that ceiling or the back of the mine is not supported, and it can be unpredictable. So for safety, you're not allowed to walk under unsupported ground or drive a machine under unsupported ground. So it's remotely controlled. And then transportation. Van Dam trucks, they do our contract ore haul from the mine down to the mill. Has everyone seen the Van Dam, the black trucks, side dumps? Okay. They now also work for Cliffs, so depending on where you see them, they're either going to Cliffs or to the Humboldt mill. So since we started operations, they've done 77,000 trips between the mine and the mill. They've driven 10 million miles, or 401 trips around the earth. And they've hauled 3.5 million wet metric tons since the start of operations. So how has their record been in doing that work? There's been 13 incidents, 3 major incidents, and since the beginning, 58 community complaints. We do have a community hotline number. My cell phone's easily accessible on our website. If anybody ever has any concerns, we welcome a phone call to let us know. And then what's interesting though is that we've had 44 of those complaints were in the first 2 years of operation. And the majority of those complaints involve noise. Because the haul trucks, there's no other haul truck like our haul trucks, like the Van Dam haul trucks on the road. They're side dumped trucks, and their leveling system that they have exhausts gas, and it's a different sound. And so when our haul truck started, it was a new sound basically. But they're not any louder than any other truck on the road. So after some of the complaints we received, we did a noise study. We hired a contractor to do a blind study. We didn't know when they were going to do it. And the study found that, yep, the decibel level isn't any different than any other truck. Because we wanted to know because we weren't sure. But those complaints really dropped off. Now most of the complaints have to do with, somebody saw something on the road, didn't think it was quite right, and they'll call in and tell us about it. But for all the trips that our drivers have done, especially in the seasonal weather challenges that we have, they've done just a remarkable job. And then they haul 66 miles down to the mill. If you're not familiar with the mill, it's an old open pit mining operation that was first constructed back in the 1950s. And we refurbished quite a bit of the existing buildings and added quite a few new buildings. So when a truck pulls into the mill, they go inside. Almost all of our operations are done inside a building. So the truck actually pulls in the building, the door is shut, the haul truck dumps the ore, and that's primarily to control dust. And then the haul truck will exit the building and do its cycle back up to the mine. From there, the ore is put into a crushing unit. The series of different crushing units here, conveyed up into the mill, where it goes through the flotation process. And then finally, our concentrate loadout facility, the CLO, where the rail cars are loaded. And once the rail cars are loaded, they'll move off to our customers. Our rail cars used to be black. They have anywhere between a 1,400 mile to I think a 3,700 mile trip, round trip, depending on what customer the concentrate's going, and they have many adventures along the way. It takes 22 to 30 days for those rail cars to do their cycle to come back to us. And that's barring any weather challenges, labor disputes in Canada, crossings that could be washed out due to other weather events. So it's always a challenge to know, okay, where are our rail cars and when are they coming back? Because we need them. And then once the concentrate is produced, then we have tails. So once that mineral is separated from the rock is your tails. And that's the waste stream that's left over. And we deposit that rock into the tails into the bottom of the old open pit mine. So this was the open pit iron mine. It's 400 feet deep. And over time that filled with water. So it became kind of an ideal tailings facility to deposit tails subaqueously, under the water. We do need to treat the water before it's released back into the environment. So we constructed, is it 2,200 feet? A 2,200 foot underground wall in this area here. And that stops the water from leaking under the ground. And when we stopped construction of that underground wall, it was pretty evident because the water started rising. It also did a free flow. So water, before we started operations, would just flow naturally into the environment, even though this was already used as a tailings facility by the Ropes gold mine. So there was already a layer of tails at the bottom of the pit before we started our operations. And then you can see this little corner of a building up here, and that's our water treatment plant. There's been a lot of changes to the water treatment plant over the last year that you can see when you drive by. So I want to talk a little bit about that. This was our original building, and then we added on here because we changed how we're treating the water, because we changed where we're getting the water from. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. This was the existing water treatment plant, just a picture of it. And that's the new addition. And we're still waiting for a clarifier to arrive sometime in June or July. Should be operational by August. If we did a side view of the tailings facility, this would be a side view. So the mill would be located in this area, water treatment plant here, and this black line kind of denotes our underground wall that we built. The bottom part here is the tails from the Ropes gold mine. Then we're putting more tails on top of that. And then we have a water cap. And what we found is that our water cap has two different types of water. So we have a quality of water that's pretty good quality on the surface. And then right where we're depositing the tails, it's a different chemistry because of the mixing with the tails that we're putting in. But then there's a line that we call the chemocline that kind of separates those two chemistries. So what's happened over the last couple of years was during seasonal weather events, particularly in the spring, when the weather changes, it gets windy, you start to see a flip of the water. Now, natural lakes will flip. You'll hear about lake flips where seasonally the water will turn over on itself. That happens in our pit as well, but it only happens in this layer that sits above the chemocline, not down here. So we have water that kind of mixes around when the weather changes. But some of that deeper water smells like sulfur. So when it flips, there's a sulfur smell. And it also changed the chemistry of the water that we're treating, which made it more difficult to treat based on the system that we had. So we do toxicity tests every month just to ensure that our water is protective of the environment. So out of the 60 toxicity tests that we've done since we've started our operations, there are 7 tests that we didn't pass. So then we go back and we change the blend of the water so that blend then does meet those standards. But 2 of those toxicity test failures happened at the same time of year when this water was flipping. So we decided, well, instead of being challenged every spring when the water quality changes that we're treating, why don't we just go to the most challenging chemistry at the bottom of the pit and just treat that. So we did. But in order to do that, we needed to change the water treatment plant process, which is all the new construction that you see. So we started out with a clarifier and ultrafiltration unit. So basically, that's simply a filter or a really tight membrane that we push water through. Then we added RO, because every 5 years our permit is up for renewal, our water discharge permit. And since it's up every 5 years, regulators can put new standards and requirements on you, and that's what happened. So we need to put an RO unit to meet the new discharge standards that were required in our new permit. But then we wanted to treat deep water at the same time, which is a different chemistry. So then we had to add something called the Fenton's reaction. And what the Fenton's reaction does is we add sulfuric acid and hydrogen peroxide to the water to force that water to, certain elements in the water to oxidize. If those elements in the water are not oxidized, then the rest of the water treatment plant system won't work. So we added a Fenton's reaction. And, almost done, we added a temporary RO unit. This was really important for us this year because of all the rain that we've received, especially last fall. So the rain events were so heavy that we wanted to get water, out of the pit. So we started treating surface water again with just the RO unit that we blend with the other water that we're treating. So it's been very busy at the water treatment plant, but we're almost done. So all we're doing now is waiting for our last clarifier, and then all of the new construction will be complete. Any questions on that? I know that was a lot.
Is that reverse osmosis then?
Yeah.
Or
Yep. So basically, no, Kristen, if you have any more detail to add, well, but it's a step above the ultrafiltration. And what an RO unit does, a reverse osmosis, is it basically takes everything out of the water except for an H2O molecule. So it's essentially becomes pure water. But we also have to be careful with that, because if you treat water to be too clean, it can actually be toxic. So one of our toxicity test failures was our water was too clean, and the organisms that we test in the water didn't reproduce because the water was toxic because it was too clean. So that's why you have to blend. You can't put pure RO water back into the environment. You have to blend it. So it has other minerals and elements in it.
is that forced through filters then, that RO?
Yeah. Yep. A very high PSI forced through very tight membranes.
So who monitors you guys?
What's that?
Who monitors what you're doing there? In other words, who are you held responsible to, and who checks and makes sure you're doing things good? I mean, a company's always right.
Yeah.
They could be doing something bad, and it's just, oh, we're perfect.
Yeah.
So who keeps track of this stuff? Who do you report to? DEQ?
Yep.
Or
Yeah. Essentially, there's
do
two.
they have someone who comes and monthly inspects your plant, takes water quality samples, all that?
Yeah. So there's two different checks and balances that we have. The one is obviously the DEQ, who does check us. And Kristen, I don't know if you want to talk about the frequency of checks and things like that.
DEQ will come and they will do, for the mine permit, sorry. For the mine permit, they'll come and do quarterly inspections, so they make sure that we're doing all the monitoring in the groundwater wells and everything on site. And then for the water treatment plants, the DEQ will come one time a year, and usually they'll bring sample bottles with them, and they'll grab a sample at the same time. So they just split a sample with us, send it off to their own lab to make sure that our data matches their data. So typically it's once a year. If we were having problems or if they suspected something else was going on, they can show up anytime and take a sample.
And then there's another checks and balance too that I'll get to in like 2 more slides, and we'll talk more about your question. But in general, though, if we talk about what's Eagle Mine's story, what are the headlines going to say about Eagle Mine 20 years from now? It's not necessarily how many people we employed. It's not how much money we made. It's not necessarily how safe we were. It's about our environmental footprint. So did we protect the water resources while we were in operation and afterwards? And so all of this and the management of our tailings facility, that is our legacy. So we put a lot of focus on it. As a safety share, I wanted to share this incident with you. There's a couple lessons here that we learned and maybe you'll get something out of it as well. I mentioned in that Fenton's reaction, we need sulfuric acid to kind of start that reaction process. And so we store these sulfuric acid totes. These are about 150 gallon totes in a small shed where they have a fitting on it that we hook up that then can pump that sulfuric acid into a pipe where we have the Fenton's reaction. And we change these out frequently, so at least once every other day. So that requires a water treatment plant operator to take this forklift, to go in, grab the tote, bring it out, grab a full one, and replace it every other day. And in this process, when this water treatment plant operator went in, he damaged the door frame of the shed that we keep it in. But at that point, and this is the lesson, is when something goes wrong, stop, refocus, what just happened, and how am I going to continue this job in a safe way? However, the water treatment plant process can't operate unless this is operational. So to get water out the door, this sulfuric acid tote has to be there in place. So there's certain pressures that maybe somebody might feel because that's their job as a water treatment plant operator. So when the tote was removed, another one was brought in, but it didn't have the right fitting. So then that one had to be removed. And then he went back and accidentally grabbed an empty one. And at that point, things are getting pretty frustrating. And I have a small farm and I have a tractor and I do certain jobs sometimes that maybe don't go well and I get frustrated and, I accidentally put a hole in the side of my garage one time with my tractor. But when my wife saw it, I said, oh, that was there when we moved in. But she didn't believe me. But this ended up in a really quite serious situation where when he went back to grab another tote, this one spilled off the forklift. It was already empty, but he accidentally punctured a full tote. And 150 gallons of sulfuric acid spilled onto the ground. So this is a serious situation in a sense for his own safety, because it's sulfuric acid, also an environmental concern, and also reportable to regulators. So it was pretty easy to clean up, just where it was, and it's also on the side of the underground cutoff wall that we have. It was on the pit side, so all of that acid would be controlled in the pit, but we went in and cleaned it up on the spot and also used, what did we use to clean it up?
Lime and soda ash.
Yeah, soda ash to neutralize the acid and help the cleanup process. But nevertheless, there's a lot of lessons learned here. When something goes wrong, just stop. Because if you get frustrated and rush, something a lot more serious is going to go wrong. And that was one of our lessons. And one thing that we talk about all the time in Eagle Mine is safety over production. Safety is always first. There's nothing more important than safety.
Those plastic or magnesium totes?
I don't know. I think they're just plastic. Plastic? Okay. So going back to your question, who monitors Eagle Mine? We do have a program that's been in place for many years now called the Community Independent Monitoring Program. This is run by Superior Watershed Partnership and also a new partner with the CMP program that we call it is the KBIC tribal community, and Shannon and Jaron are here from KBIC for today's forum as well. So we've been working a lot with SWP and KBIC on monitoring and verification monitoring. So we produce our water test results. They'll come on site with us. They're allowed to come onto our mine site and mill site, also do split sampling of the water. They send their sample to a different lab, and then they compare their sample to our sample. So therefore, the company, there's no way to doctor the numbers, so to speak. They are what they are. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to CMP's website. And these are all the different monitoring stations that we have. Some of them are wells, some of them are surface water monitoring, and you can click on a dot and it will tell you, what the statistics have been, for that particular site.
Do their numbers match yours?
Yes, they always have. I don't think we've ever had any anomalies in what their lab numbers say and what ours say.
Maybe a couple times, but then we went and resampled and they matched. Sometimes you can get a lab error.
Yeah.
But just a couple times. But never have we gone to a point where we've had a final sample that we disagreed, like the results were far apart. So.
So this is a new tool. It actually just launched a week ago. This is a kind of a wide view of the mine site. So this is the mine here, and these are all the different sampling locations that we test for on a regular basis. So the water, the natural flow of water is this way, which is why we have these different sampling stations north of the mine site. And then to zoom in on the mine site, these are all the different monitoring stations that we have on the mine site. So some of them, like some of the yellow dots, there might be some anomalies there. One of them was chloride. When we were in construction, we put a lot of salt and sand on the ground in the wintertime to prevent slips, trips, and falls, really for safety. And some of that chloride now we can see in the monitoring wells. Same with one of the sites. I think it was this one. Showed chloride elevation, which we're assuming is from road salt from the highway. But again, all publicly available. All of our numbers and all of our water data is publicly available. So, to go into our life of mine, the light blue columns are the Eagle ore body, and then the dark blue columns are the Eagle East ore body. So you can see in 2020, or maybe even by the end of this year, we'll start to blend the Eagle ore body, which is very high quality ore, with the lower quality of ore that we have left in the Eagle ore body. We'll blend that, which gives us a really nice business until the end of 2023, when we're planning for closure of Eagle Mine, unless we find more ore, and we're still looking. If it wasn't for Eagle East, we would have a challenging business starting this year, and probably would be closed by next year or the end of 2021. So Eagle East was a huge benefit to Eagle Mine. Some of the places we're looking for more ore isn't just around the Eagle Mine site, but starting in a couple weeks, we would like to move exploration drilling over more to the western UP, in and around Covington, Sidnaw area. And we have several different targets in that area that we'd like to put a drill rig to see what's there. So for us at Eagle, this has been exciting. We've been working on being able to put a drill rig in that area with all the different approvals and landowner approvals and mineral leases for the last 2 years. So this process has been ongoing for 2 years, and now we're at the stage where we are allowed to put a drill rig there. And we've had, I don't know if everybody's familiar with some of our community programs that we have. We have community capacity building programs. The big reason why some of these programs are created is because of the short life of Eagle Mine relative to a lot longer life mines that we're used to seeing in the UP. And so we wanted to kind of manage that boom-bust cycle. That boom, you start a mine, and then the bust, the economic bust when you close the mine. So how can we soften that? We created some pretty cool programs that have been quite successful. One of them is the Accelerate UP program, which helps entrepreneurs. If you have a business idea, it helps you bring that business idea to fruition, to an actual business. And there are several different businesses in Marquette County that exist today because of the coaching from Accelerate UP. But what happens to that program when we close? This year, we did quite a few studies of all of our capacity building programs. We used the University of Wisconsin Stout to do some review of the Accelerate UP program and also our middle college program that we have with the local schools to find out, okay, are these programs successful? We think they are, but are they? What benefit are they providing to the community? And then are they sustainable? What happens to them when Eagle Mine closes? And those are all the things we're working on this year. Also for Powell Township came to us last summer with some help with their recreation plan. They had some really cool ideas with their recreation opportunities up in Big Bay. So we said, hey, we got a couple ideas for you. Would you be interested in hiring the Center for Responsible Travel? So it's basically a company that focuses on sustainable tourism, and Powell Township was. So the Center for Responsible Travel came in a couple months ago and did a review, and their draft report is out for Powell Township for a review right now. So some pretty exciting opportunities there as well. And then of course the middle college program, you may have heard about this on the news. We have about 20 kids every year join the middle college program. There's always 60 kids in the program because it's a 3-year program. But basically, when you're in 10th grade, you decide, hey, you know, I'm interested in a skilled trade. It could be in healthcare too. Maybe in the future there'll be a cybersecurity component. And by the time you're in 11th grade, you're starting to split your classes from high school and college. And then by the time you're a senior, you're doing almost all college work. And then you go one more year, your 13th year, and it's all college work again and focus on that skill development, that skilled trade. And then basically you're graduating with a skilled trade, your high school diploma. You're ready for the workforce at that point, unless you want to go on for more schooling, and it didn't cost you any money. It was $0. Since we've had this program, we've saved those families $325,000. We've invested $400,000 into the program directly, with other money set aside in the foundation that can be used when Eagle closes. So that's one of the programs that we're most excited about. Last but not least, again, public tours are starting in June. By the end of this week or next week, you should be able to sign up online, eaglemine.com. Public tours are free. And again, to come see the mill and the mine. Yes, Bill.
Where do we need to go to the mill? We have to come to Marquette?
To mill, no. People can drive themselves right to the mill and park there. So we don't have any busing for the mill tours, but we do still bus people to the mine from Marquette, from our downtown information center. Yep.
What are your commodity prices doing?
They were pretty, so let's go back over a year where nickel prices were pretty good. And then they started to come down last year and kind of stabilized around that little over $5 when they were a year before that up to about $6. And I think they even reached $7 at one point, $7 a pound, which is pretty good for us. To give you some perspective, they were $8 a pound when we started operations. And then within the first 6 months of operations in 2015, they went down to less than $4 a pound. So we had a pretty challenging first year of operations because of commodity prices. But now they're stable. We'd like them to be, be nice to go up a little bit more.
Copper kind of depressed right now?
What's that?
Isn't copper kind of depressed right now?
I'm not so sure about copper. No.
278.
278.
Flat compared to nickel.
Yeah. So still flat. Cobalt came down too. Last summer it was $27 a pound, but that's actually come down again. So, yeah. Anything else you ever wanted to know about mining?
How long were the tours?
How long are the tours, Megan?
2 hours.
2 hours
The
each?
The mine's a little bit longer just because the drive time is probably 3.5, but the mill is 2.
Good.
Has your pit flipped over yet in the spring, or does it do it in the spring and the fall? Or?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So there's only a slight smell. This slight smell.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Very minor.
Yeah.
But yes, the surface of the pit will flip over spring and fall, just like any other lake will.
Right.
So.
I'm just curious if it did yet. That's all.
I think it would have done it already.
We have a monitor that sits right on the pit, so we get real-time data all the time, and so you'll start to see the changing quality. I would say a full turnover of that surface water, not yet.
Oh, okay.
That's what I would say. That it's the ice just came off a few weeks back.
So mostly because it's not been warm yet.
Yeah, I don't think it's been warm enough.
Where are you discharging that water now? Did you change that last year or something?
Yeah.
Is
So
it on
we.
east or west of Boundary Road FX?
So it'd be east of Wolf Lake Road.
East of Wolf Lake Road.
Yeah, we discharge directly to the Escanaba River.
Yeah.
So that was the big change in
what I
the
thought, but-
treatment process. Yeah, we put an underground pipe in to the river. All the discharge prior to that was in the wetlands.
All of what now?
All the discharge previous to that was into the wetlands, the nearby wetlands.
Oh, and then it filtered in.
Yeah, so now we pump water from the river to circulate back into the wetland, and then our discharge goes to the river. Because the wetlands always have to stay wet, so we have to,
Right,
if we're not discharging our water to the wetlands, we have to pump water to the wetlands.
okay.
That's why that pump house was refurbished on the Escanaba River. We refurbished that pump house and we're using that to pump water out of the river and just into the wetlands. It's an irrigation system.
The pump house, west of.
West of the bridge, yeah, yep.
Water's pretty high there now.
Yeah.
Over the county road.
Yeah, I went and checked was it a few weeks ago? Before the rains, I checked and it was really high, kind of came down, but I haven't been there
It's as high
recently.
as it was before now.
Really? Wow. So our pump house is
Yeah.
underwater?
Yeah, we gotta go through water.
Yeah. So you have to go through water to get over the bridge, right?
Hopefully they raise that road up when they put that new bridge in there.
Yeah, because they're going to move it. Yeah. Otherwise, there's still actually some food left over if everybody still wants something to eat. And thanks for your time. Appreciate it. And we'll be around to answer any questions you might have.